Welcome to The Object of the Game. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Maureen Kyle with Coach Chuck Kyle, and this is where we talk about youth sports, what life lessons are learned on whatever playing field that either you took a part of or your child is now playing. And we have a little bit of everything today. We are going to be talking to one of the men who's involved in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in a little bit, a friend of yours, Dad.
Right. We're on a committee together, a council, a high school, the high school council, a national high school council, and it comes through the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I think there's some nice projects coming up.
Yeah.
That with the help of Pro Football Hall of Fame, and obviously NFL is somewhat involved. Some positive things that'll go to young people who are interested, not just in football, but in sports.
Yeah, there are facilities. If you haven't been down in Canton yet, or you haven't even driven by where the Pro Football Hall of Fame is, there's a lot of development. I know the news has been covering it, but we are going to be talking about that in a little bit and see how Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, Canton are going to become a tourist destination, hopefully, for NFL fans. But before we do, I want to take a few segments because I think I get a lot of questions. I think people come to me going, what does your dad think? Probably almost every day. And it's typically about youth sports, families going through it, parents talking about, oh gosh, this has gotten so crazy. But then, you know that every parent out there gets a little crazy about their kid in sports. But I think that's why people look to you, Dad, as, hey, what does your dad think? Because you had thousands of young men come through your programs, run track, play football. You've seen the evolution of youth sports over the past several decades. And we know that because of smartphones and the way society is now, you've seen this acceleration in how people operate and how, they're living their day-to-day lives. But I want to get back to the basics. One of the questions I get all the time, what kind of traits did you see? What characteristics did you see in your most successful players over the years? And I doubt it had anything to do with a pushy parent or how much social media following they had.
Yeah. The important thing to realize that the young, I did obviously with boys, but there's youth football for girls too, and other sports. Okay. The important part is when you're dealing with the youth, really the youth, right at that point, honestly, they're just sort of experimenting. They're sampling. I'm going to use that word sampling. How about that? That's the best way to say it. They're sampling. They're playing a number of sports, and they should. There's no reason to at all. And in fact, health-wise, it's not healthy just to have a young kid just play one sport. Multiple sports. There's multiple benefits physically even and mentally. Okay, but understanding at that level, why are kids doing it? Why do kids want to do it? Well, they watch football, they watch baseball, basketball, and they'd like to get more competent in the sport. Mm-hmm. They do. They find it interesting. Great. Wouldn't it be nice if they were that interested in English, okay? I mean, and math and everything like that. Yes, because when those antennas go up that they're interested, there's something can be done. But also, they want to be with their friends. Mm-hmm. They're little kids. If their friends going out for that sport, they'll go out for that sport, right? I mean, and they love that camaraderie. Is that important for the little kids? Oh, yeah, definitely, to be sociable, laugh, have fun, sometimes cry a little bit because you're disappointed. You got to live with that, kid. There's going to be a few more disappointments as you go through. And, be with their friends. And honestly, they just want to have fun. Yeah. They just want to have fun. Let them have fun. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it just seems a little too intense. And the officials will tell you that. The coaches will tell you that. Mm-hmm. And if parents, I have to share with you that I have a research from Utah State University. And it was a very fine program that they put together with tons of of information, and they've come up with a pretty solid look at, you know what, kids love having their parents there. They love it, but they're embarrassed at times. What are they embarrassed about? Okay, well, you know what? When parents are drawing attention to themselves, the game's going on, the kids are playing, and they're acting kind of strangely like that. Criticizing coaching, criticizing a player or the other team. That's not supporting the kid. It isn't. And the kids, they're afraid to say anything. But in this survey, they were willing to say, that embarrasses me when my parents are yelling like that and acting like that. That was revelation, right? Disputing the official, coaches, parent, that doesn't go over well with kids. If the official calls a penalty, honestly, the coach, we don't have instant replay, so maybe you agree with it, maybe you don't. It'll iron out. That's the only reason why you lose the game. I don't see it. But the parent, again, contradicting at the official, following the official to his car after the game. Come on.
It has happened.
It does.
Yeah.
And that goes nowhere.
No.
And people have to understand that those little kids are watching the coach. They're watching the official, and they're expecting the adults to act like adults, but also their parents.
Yeah.
Okay? And criticism of performances, blaming the outcome on the referee, and just again, booing the opposition. Come on. Yeah. I mean, that's not, there's an education going on, and that's, those sort of things are happening. And believe me, kids enjoy that their parents are there. They really do. But what are the things to say? There's a difference between encouragement and praising. Yeah. People may not realize that, but there's a big difference, and one has to watch out with praising. You were the best player out there. I love it when you win. Mm-hmm. Come on, after the game, come on, we're going to go for a treat because you guys won. All right, now stop and think what you're doing by saying that. Mm-hmm. And doing that. Well, you're going to get an ice cream because you won. How about, hey, I was really proud the way you played tonight. I really, did you learn? What'd you learn today in the game? That'd be fun. Why not just ask that? Yeah. So I'm wandering. I'm sorry. I'm pontificating. But it's the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, this is research.
Kids, I mean, if you are a parent, you know that kids pick up on the smallest things. It's funny, what my 6-year-old observes about me and then tells me, and so if they're watching us on the sidelines acting this way, they're also going to mirror that behavior. Right. In all of the parenting interviews, talking to psychologists that I've done over the years, they always say that kids learn from our behavior. And then when we are acting that way on the sidelines, guess how they're going to act within the sport? Right. Because if they see you yelling at the ref, how do you think they're going to act toward the ref? We're going to go into more referees in a bit. And this parenting guide or parent guide, Dad, you said that was out of Utah, but isn't it part of what you're talking about with the Browns youth?
With the Browns youth,
program?
We're doing with USA Football and with the Browns committee that we're working on. Mm-hmm. It is an issue that we're going to attack. How's that? Yeah. We're going to attack this thing all over Ohio, not just in Cleveland. And again, this is a study. People can go online. It's a Utah State study on the parent guide to youth sports. And if they look at it, I think it says a lot. I think parents should. I want to make sure it gets out there because I think that it goes a long way with just understanding. So some things that you say, you don't realize that you're thinking you're praising the kid. That can be interpreted a different way.
Right. Well, while we're on this trajectory, we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, what I want to talk to you about, too, is how this is affecting referees, because as we know, especially in this state, there's a referee shortage. People don't want to be out on the field. But then also, let's talk about, let's turn this in a positive way and make it a playbook for the parents on what are some of the best ways that you can support your child who is playing youth sports. How do you encourage them? What are the right words to say? But then also, what role do you play in this trifecta of coach, player, parent? We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are watching The Object of the Game. We are talking about parents in youth sports. I don't even know if we meant to get into this as much as we are, but while we have Coach Kyle here, who has dealt with parents for 50 years in sports, and is now working with the Browns with their youth organization, and has a parent guide here that is research out of Utah, that is guiding parents on how to act. And how many of you complain about how parents act, and then you go and you try to coach your kid from the sidelines? I know you've all done it. I've probably accidentally done it a couple of times too, where I'm like, get the ball, we don't want to do it. It's innate. So talk to us about, how do you support your child as a parent? And I know you're involved in CYO. My kids are in CYO sports. There is a prayer.
I'm involved in a lot of leagues.
You're involved in a lot of them, but there's a prayer before every game where it's sort of like, it's basically saying, dear Jesus, let the players play, the coaches coach, and the parents just sit there and support. So what do you think?
Well, again, I'm in using this parental guide. There's 4 questions, first of all. And I a couple episodes before, I just mentioned this, but I'm going to read this. That I think it's good for parents. Okay, your son or daughter comes out, hey, I want to go out for fill in the blank. It doesn't have to just be football, obviously, any sport. And that's great. Now, what we mentioned earlier, why is a kid going out? Friends are going out. I want to learn more about the sport, and I want to have fun. That's why they're doing it. That's why. It's not because they're, Dad, Mom, I'm planning on getting a scholarship to college when I get there. That's not really.
That's what parents say.
That's not in that kid's mind.
You hear that from parents.
It is not in the kid's mind. So I think there's 4 questions. Let me just read the questions. I'm not going to get that much involved. In all honesty, at the beginning of each season, parents, just ask yourself these questions and write them down. I would suggest write them down. Number 1, why did you sign your child up for this youth sport? Be honest. Why'd you sign the kid up? The kid asked me to sign him up. He sounds like he wants to do it. Okay, write it down. Why'd you do it? Like the kid be involved. I like that he or she are involved with it. Fine. Now, second question: what do you hope your child gains from this youth sport? I guarantee you, what they will write at the beginning of the season. I just want my child to, have fun. I want my child to work with other kids and get used to doing that. Child seems interested in that sport. Get better at it. Get better at it. They'll be coached and something like that. Good. Third question: what is your role in the child's youth experience? Okay, parent, I got to get the kid there on time. I got to make sure all the equipment's there. If they got to buy shoes, I got to do. Yeah, you willing to do that? Where's this game? All the way on the other side of the city. Yeah. Too bad you're not golfing today. Yeah. You're going. Okay, well, that's golf.
It's a commitment. Yeah,
let's go.
It is a time commitment.
Yeah, and that. What is the end goal for your child's sports participation? Now, write it down. Write it down at the beginning of the year. Okay, at the end of the year, look at it. Maybe even during the year, look at it and remind yourself, hey, that's what I said would be a successful year. I think those 4 questions, first of all, there's a lot more to talk about here, but parents need to ask those questions themselves and be clear about it. You go and you see your kid having fun out there and his buddy, and they're all having,
Yeah.
that's good. Or they lose the game and they're all kind of sad together, but they're patting each other on the back. You reached a goal. You did. You reached a goal. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's very good. Kid finishes the year and goes, I had a lot of fun. I want to do this again next year. Good job, coach. Good job, parents. The kid is going to work at it now. So anyway, that very young. That's all you need to work on right now. They're going to go on and play in high school. There will be a point where that's the next step, where you start really getting into that technique, research, and so on like that. Let them have fun first.
Yeah. I don't know how many times we've already talked about maybe is that you're not the only coach I've talked to that says if a kid isn't having fun, they will drop out of that sport by age 12, 13, like right before, like that right before 8th grade year.
Right.
And so if you think about how much money parents are sinking into club sports, travel, leagues, whatever it is, and a lot of the times it's the attitude, nothing that you just mentioned. It's is my kid on the best team? Are they starting? Are they the best player on there? And then they're, making it a business for a child who's 10, 11, 12 years old. And then the kid's like, I don't really want to do this anymore. They need to have fun. And I've heard it from you and I've heard it from other coaches. As long as that kid is having fun, you'll see them continue past age 12 and 13 and 14 if they can, and then we get into the whole, athletic and talent aspect of it. But one thing you mentioned before we started recording today was pride and how to teach, encourage pride in the right way. And I think that's what your teams were always known for. So when we come back from break, let's go into humility and pride, but like the right way to strike it, and sportsmanship, because that's what I think a lot of people are saying is missing from some of these youth sports in today's society. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Object of the Game. I'm Maureen Kyle with Coach Chuck Kyle. And the one thing I heard over and over again about the Ignatius football teams and the reputation that you instilled was the sportsman-like conduct on the field. Right. And the way there was never too much excessive celebrating in the end zone. And before we started recording today, we were talking about, how can we get parents the information that they need? And you brought up pride as something to help teach young people. And what did you mean by that?
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard people say, be proud of what you do, right? You see products that'll advertise, proud of the tradition we have in our product or whatever it is like that. Pride can be bounced around a little bit. We're not talking arrogance. And then, pride can be a virtue. It really can be a virtue. It can be something very good because it very simply proud of the way you act, proud of the way you play on the field. Just proud of how your team works together. That's what we're talking about. It's not arrogance. And what I think we'll see today with our guests coming up is the city of Canton. Here's the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and they're proud of that they have that there, and they are so supportive because they're proud. This is something that people come from all over the nation to visit, and the game of football is proud of its history, and it's not arrogance. It's just that there was a quality of play that they expected, and to me, act like you've done it before. Right? Act like this is, something that you expect to play at a high level. Mm-hmm. If you don't expect to act and play at a high level, you'll never get there. You'll never get there. I mean, and so, you make a tackle, be proud of the way you tackled. Mm-hmm. I did it well. Be proud of that. And it's the nice thing about sports is there's a constant thing or experience out there. you're playing shortstop and it's a ground ball and you fielded it properly and you threw the ball, be proud of that because you worked hard to get that and you achieved it. So I think the important thing it comes down to somewhere along the line, the kid has to understand that pride can be used as a virtue to up your standards of your performance, the way you act. It's not arrogance. And that helps you as you move along and along that, people respect that you're a person that lives on a higher level of concern for other people and act in a way that is honorable. How's that?
Mm-hmm.
There is a way of being honorable, and that can get lost nowadays.
What did when you sat across from players and you talked to them about this pride? There's a fine line between ego and pride, and kids, especially around that age, also need a lot of confidence. So how would you talk to them about taking pride in themselves? Like, what would you do to guide them?
Well, we'd always finish a practice with 10 seconds, and we talked earlier about that.
But go into it in case somebody is just
all right. Well, you finish a practice, and everybody's tired and everything like that. But I always finish the practice by just going, okay, we're going to take 10 seconds, and there's something today that you just maybe weren't proud of, the way you play it. You didn't do it right, the technique. You had some good plays, but those plays that, I didn't do it right. And, if you're proud of the way you play, that bothers you. If it doesn't bother you, then you got a problem. Mm-hmm. You do, because you'll make that mistake over and over again. So with the 10 seconds, we'd finish practice, and then I'd give them 10 seconds. I'd say, think of during the practice today where it didn't work. You just didn't make a good play. Your technique was up, whatever it was. And think of, within these 10 seconds, how you're going to correct that tomorrow. So 24 hours from today, when we do 10 seconds, you can go, I did it right today. Mm-hmm. I did it right. So if everybody on the football team did that, we're a better team.
Yeah. That's something I think every child can take, every person can take and incorporate it into their lives. All right, you mentioned NFL having a proud legacy. When we come back, we are going to be joined with a special guest from the Pro Football Hall of Fame to talk about how, we all hope that Northeast Ohio is the premier NFL fan destination for tourism. So we're going to be talking about the development that's happening there and ways that you can get involved. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are watching The Object of the Game. And how lucky are we here in Northeast Ohio to be associated with the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Every year, we get a spotlight on us for that Hall of Fame football game, for the very start of the season. But there's so much more to the museum and to all of the operations there. And our guest today is going to talk about it. Dad, you are a personal friend of our guest today.
We work together on the National High School Council through the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And Rich Desrosiers was the guy who called and asked if I wanted to be on the kid. So I definitely appreciate his friendship here. So, he's the chief communication officer of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, he began as with major. He went to Lorain High School, University of Akron. His degree in mass media and communication. Sound familiar, my dear?
Familiar,
all
Rich.
Right, there you go.
Yep.
Guys, right?
Go Zippy.
Yeah.
There you go. Canton Repository as a reporter.
Yeah.
You know a reporter, and then you gotta move up, right?
You move your way up.
Right. Yep. Metro business editor, Akron Beacon Journal. Back to the Canton Repository. And then an interesting transition, I have to say. You were editor there, and you end up being asked, and you accept being the chief communications officer at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Interesting transition, I think.
Yeah.
If there's an adjective that describes it, interesting's as good as any. I could not have predicted that I'd end up here, but I can say that for a long time I wanted to end up here. Back when I started, at the repository, which was in the mid 80s. So, we'll let people do the math on how old that makes me.
Mm.
Of course, this is pre-internet. This is a lot of really almost pre-computer. At least, if you were young, low on the rung like I was, I didn't get a computer. There was only so many to go around for the entire newsroom. So
Wow.
I didn't start on a computer. So if you wanted to learn about football and pro football, you made the trip from the newspaper office over here to the archives at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And quite honestly, those summers when I was doing biographies of whoever were some of the new class members, I just thought I was in heaven. I mean, it certainly didn't look like heaven because it was just mounds of paper clippings and filing cabinets and very kind of dark and dank. There was really no better place to be than in the archives here. And you're always in the back of your mind, boy, wouldn't this be a great place to work? And it only took me about 35 years, but I finally made it.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah, and to be involved in that process, which we will talk about later
Yes.
with some of the inductees, has to be a dream come true.
Right.
But I do want to talk to you. I mean, I've been down there as recently as I haven't been down this winter, but I went over the summer, and to see the fields that have been built around the museum, and to learn about some of the programs where you are able to get crowds in from out of town. I know as Northeast Ohioans, we always feel like, oh, if we can just get people here, we'll show them how
Right.
great
Right.
Cleveland, Akron, Canton
Right.
is. So you're pulling in these crowds. Talk to us about some of the ways you are helping to make this region a tourism destination for especially football lovers.
Well, a lot of times when I tell people, if I'm speaking to a group, I say, listen, you know us kind of through the colloquial Pro Football Hall of Fame, but our real name, our legal name is National Football Museum. And I kind of pause and hold that thought with my audience for a half second. I said, just chew on that for just a half of a second. The National Football Museum, we're it. We are the guardians of the game. We're the guardians of the most popular game, in America right now, professional football. And there isn't another one of these in New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles or South Florida or anywhere else. It's here in Canton, Ohio. It's here in Northeast Ohio. It is a gift to the community. So for that reason, it is a bucket list destination for a lot of people every year. But what we saw as an organization, roughly a decade or so ago, when the whole idea of the Hall of Fame Village development, began to germinate, was okay. You've got these people who come to the Pro Football Museum and they spend 2, 3, 4 hours, 6 hours here, depending on their kind of their level of fandom. They come in and they're all excited and they walk out all excited, but they kind of somewhere between walking out the door and getting to their car, they say, now what?
Right. Yeah.
And so the idea of the village was to kind of overcome that now what moment and making the trip to see the Pro Football Hall of Fame and even more of a destination outing. And so the idea of some amusement, some retail, the youth fields, how can we capture people for more than the 3 or 4 hours that they might spend in the museum? And that's really how, the whole village idea took off. And there's been a few fits and starts along the way, some economic, crises, bubbles, COVID certainly affected the overall development. But by and large, things have gone well. And really, I think one of the centerpieces, besides Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, which is,
Right.
Coach, you've seen
Oh
the
yeah.
transition
Yeah.
from old
Yes.
Fawcett Stadium.
Yes.
Fawcett Stadium was a jewel in the community, no question. But it dated back to the 30s, and it was it was a WPA project. For people who know what that means. And it needed a refresh, and it got a really good one. And the NFL considers it an NFL caliber field. The lighting, the press box, the audio, the turf, all of that has to meet very strict NFL specs. So you've got that, and you've got all these youth fields now. So the overarching idea is get these, and it doesn't even have to be football. And quite honestly, when it was first envisioned, oh, we're going to get these tackle football tournaments here. No, I mean, that's pretty rare. It's flag, it's soccer, and it's lacrosse. And, you get those tournaments here, get those kids and, boys, girls of all ages, get their families here. I don't think anything excites us more than to see license plates in our parking lot from, Washington State, Illinois,
Wow.
Florida. I
Right.
mean, you name it. They're here all the time. And okay, now they're here. They're playing their sports. They're staying in our hotels. They're going up to Cleveland to the Rock Hall. They're going to Cedar Point. They're going to, different things in between and staying in Canton, Ohio for 2 or 3 days. That's really the success story.
Right. Just quickly, this is going back to 2009 very quickly. I coached the United States under 19 football team world championship, and it was in Canton at the Benson Stadium, and it was the community, first of all, were outstanding, and they still are in their volunteer.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. They're great. They're so loyal. Number two, packed crowds. And the United States won. That's great. 9 kids off of that team went into pro football. Some of them may be in the hall gradually someday. And how about that? But anyway, if that organization would have just said, hey, we're doing it there every year because of all the cooperation, they had great attendance, everything like that. And it was the July 4th weekend. So your building had a bunch of jerseys and everything in the gift shop. So all these nations went into your gift shop. They almost sold your gift shop out, and you got the Pro Football, All-Star game or whatever game coming up, the Pro Football Hall of Fame game. They had to, I guess they were panicking because we got to order everything. We got wiped out by all the, Japan and New Zealand and all those teams. They should have just kept it right there, right at that location because it was great. They had to move it around. Didn't work at the other cities.
And then it fizzled.
Well, listen, you get to see history like we mentioned it in the making when these new classes come in. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk to Rich Desrosiers about how these NFL players find out that they've made it into the Hall of Fame, and we want to hear some of the stories that you have from there. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. You are watching The Object of the Game. Our guest today, Rich Desrosiers, with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And Rich, I think you might have one of the coolest jobs out there when it comes to the inductees learning that they are going to make it into the Hall of Fame. My dad was kind of updating me on you guys have talked about this before.
I was just looking things up, and all of a sudden there was this interview you had, I don't know, a few years ago, and I just thought the guy would get a text or an email going, hey, congratulations, you're in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, be there, whatever. Oh, no. There is this thing called Knox, which you are very involved in. Please, because I knew nothing about it. I'm sure 99.9% of the audience does not know what this is about. Please explain.
I will, and the backstory is pretty cool. So, back in the day and that is the class of 2013 and earlier, it was basically all done by phone. The selectors would meet, they'd make their choices, and somebody from the Hall of Fame staff, sometimes it was, the executive director at the time, might have been Steve Perry or Pete Elliott, John Banker, kind of in that era from the, 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s. Or Joe Horrigan, who is currently the senior advisor here and was an EVP and one of the country's foremost historians on the game. One of those 3-4 gentlemen pick up a phone and say, "Hey, Mr. Namath, you're in the Pro Football Hall of Fame."
Wow.
That was still the case in January of 2014, our most previous past president, Mr. David Baker, is hired to take over the role from Steve Perry, who retired from that job. And then in February, the selectors get together, and David's going to make these phone calls to everybody. And he makes his first phone call to Michael Strahan, is in the class of 2014. And they called Michael first because the Super Bowl and the press conference are in New York City. This is the year that the Super Bowl was in New York. And so the Hall of Fame news conference is going to be at 30 Rock. And so he calls Michael Strahan thinking that Michael could actually get across town and get to the news conference in person. Second phone call he makes is to Derek Brooks, close friend of David's. So then David starts working his way down the list. The third phone call David makes is to Ray Guy, who Coach will know and others will know, first punter in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think the number is 34 years he waited to get in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And he is so overcome with emotion that he drops the phone.
Oh my gosh.
And David hears the phone hit an end table.
Oh.
And apparently, Ray either fainted or just,
Oh,
whether
wow.
he completely
Oh.
fainted or just was so overcome with emotion for a hot second that all David can hear on the other end is Ray's wife yelling, Ray, Ray, are you okay? Are you okay, honey? Are you okay? And David tells the story a little better than I do.
Yeah.
David says, God, I thought I killed my first Hall of Famer.
Oh my gosh.
And so David makes the rest of his calls and comes back and he tells the staff, this is such he's hearing all this emotion in these gentlemen's voices as he's making these phone calls. He says, we need to be more up close. What can we do to be more up close and personal when this news is delivered? And that was the genesis for the knocks on the door. So what the Hall of Fame did was take all 15 finalists for the Hall of Fame to the Super Bowl city. The selectors would meet, they'd make their choices, and however many number were going to be in the class that year, 5, 6, 7 people would get this on their hotel door. Meanwhile, the NFL Network cameras are in tow, and David would go up to the hotel door, knock on the door, and you'd hear the screaming on the other side, because maybe not so much the first year, because not everybody knew exactly what it meant. But by the second year, they sure did. So, 16, 17, 18, 19, David knocks on the door. People on the other side are going crazy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
2020 happens and there's no class, there's no knocks. And, class was chosen, but there's no knocks. And so now even into 21, there's still some guidelines because of COVID. So what are we going to do? Well, David decides we're going to surprise them at their own house. We're going to find out where they live, and we're going to surprise them at their house and give them the knock at their house. Well, David retires after 21, and the new executive director here, the president, CEO, Jim Porter, loves the idea of the knocks, but doesn't want to be on camera. And thinks, how do we ratchet up the level of exclusivity and excitement and create an additional heartwarming moment by having a Hall of Famer knock on the door of the new Hall of Famer. So if you saw Joe Thomas's, you saw Walter Jones knock on Joe's door. Why Walter Jones? Because when Joe Thomas was at the University of Wisconsin, he said to his coach, he said, who's the best? I want to be the best. Who do I need to model my game after? And Joe's coach said, well, you need to model your game after Walter Jones, who was playing in Seattle at the time. And very quietly, they arranged for Joe to get some practice tapes of Walter Jones. So they formed this bond, so there's these different connections that guys have formed. So we work with, we learn about the guys who are about to be in the class, what would be meaningful for them to get this knock on the door. So now it's one Hall of Famer knocking on the door of the others. I think the one this year that captured people's attention the most was Sterling and Shannon Sharp, who are now the first brothers in the Hall of Fame. And the ruse was that Shannon was in town and just wanted to have lunch with his brother. And so he gets his brother to come over to his house And Sterling walks into the house and sees Shannon standing there in his gold jacket, and Shannon says, "Welcome to the Pro Football Hall of Fame." So that was
Oh, wow.
and I'm off in the corner
Mhm.
of the room hiding so that I'm not on camera. And I didn't see it,
Oh,
uh, but I heard it,
Yeah.
and I got to see it later when everybody else did when the show aired on TV.
Yeah.
But I did hear it, and just by hearing it, I'm getting a tear in my eye. In that moment, just being able to hear it happen, let alone see it happen. So it's very special. Um,
sure.
it's hard to keep secret. Somehow we've managed to keep them secret for 3 years now. Let's see, 25, 4, 3, 4. So this is the fourth year that we've done it this way, and by and large, been able to keep it secret.
Amazing.
That-
And you're there every time it happens, or you go to most of them?
I've been to them all for the classes of 23, 24, and 25.
Wow.
Well,
Amazing.
that's what a moment.
I know. I didn't know
Wow.
that
Yeah.
thank you for taking us through the
Yeah,
history of that
the
too.
history is great. It's
Yeah.
great. Awesome.
Um,
Awesome.
We're going to take a quick break. And Rich, when we come back, I'm also always curious about, because I hear rumors about somebody who's in the Hall of Fame will want to come and visit and is walking around the halls. And if you happen to be a fan that day
Oh,
who's walking through the museum and you happen to see one of your
that's
favorites.
so-and-so.
Right. I want to hear if you've ever witnessed that and if you have any of those moments that you can share. Let's take a quick break.
Right. And we're going to talk about our character project.
Yes.
That's important.
Yep. All right. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Object of the Game. We are getting some inside scoop on the Pro Football Hall of Fame and some of the things that I never even thought about that would happen. Thanks to Rich Desrosiers joining us today. Now, Rich, you just took us behind the scenes with the knocks that people get to learn that they were inducted into the Hall of Fame. But when you're there working your every day, do you ever see moments where a Pro Football Hall of Famer comes in and just wants to walk around and they just want to see the museum like any other normal person?
They usually it's not so much a surprise for us
Yeah.
because
I imagine.
because if they are going to come here, we want to work with them on and I can talk about our residency program, which is kind of an offshoot of your question, but
Mhm.
but there have been some other people who show up here, some other professional players. One who is fairly recent that I got a chance to meet was Richmond Webb, who played for the Miami Dolphins. He's been on the list to be a Hall of Fame candidate. I think he's kind of right there on the bubble for being a Hall of Famer. Very large man, very nice man, and got a chance to talk with him. Mel Gibson walked through our front door not too long ago.
Hey,
Like unannounced, like you just look up
unannounced.
unannounced.
there's
No
Mel
one-
Gibson.
No one had
Incredible.
any idea he was coming. I think that was very deliberate. He wanted it to be low key.
Yeah.
He was in town. I'm not even sure why he was in. I missed all this.
Yeah.
Never really heard the exact backstory on why. I was just passing through, and figured like we talked earlier, right? This is such a unique place that he thought, well, I'm here. I guess if I'm in Canton, Ohio, I need to go to the Hall of Fame,
Right.
and he did, and a couple of people, there's like a bunch of people doing double take, triple take. They're like, that's Mel Gibson. It was. And, but more recently, we've started a residency program, and kind of a funny path to that was, we were trying to put something together with a couple of musicians, from the Rock Hall. We're trying to figure out, is there something we could do with the Rock Hall? And I think, a whole bunch of rock stars wish they were athletes, and a whole bunch of athletes wish they were rock stars, and we've done some stuff with the Rock Hall as far as sharing memorabilia and sharing exhibits and things like that, and sharing some best practices. They're great friends of ours, great business partners of ours. Could never really seem to get it worked out because it's like, well, if you want to work with so and so, you're going to have to wait 6 months because they're in residency in Las Vegas, and we're having the same poor luck with a couple of the country people that well, they're down in Nashville, but they're basically in residency, so they can't travel, they can't commit. We were looking to fill our Concert for Legends with a couple people. Oh, so and so would love to do the Concert for Legends, but they're in residence, maybe next year. this just kept coming. There was like this spate of 5, 6, 7 times this kept coming up that somebody we wanted to do something with was in residence. And our president said, maybe we need to do a residency and let's talk about that. Well, we did. We started last year for about 30 weeks last year. We had 30 for, about 4 or 5 days at a time, had a Hall of Famer in Canton on 30 unique weeks. And this year that program will grow. We're at about 38 commitments for this year.
Wow.
So if you visit the Hall of Fame between Wednesday and Saturday, pretty much any week, you got a pretty good chance of running into a Hall of Famer. So
Wow. Wow. That's incredible.
Harold Carmichael's coming into town this week.
Yeah.
He'll do different things around the community. In some of our more recent ones, Bryant Young was in town, and Coach, I know you mentioned the character exhibit. We can
Yes.
segue into that through
Yeah.
Bryant Young. But the really fun thing for us as Hall of Fame staff is how self-directed these residencies are. They're not cookie cutter. It's what do the guys want to do? So Mike Singletary went out to Mansfield and went to the prison. Went to the
Yeah.
Richland County Correctional Facility and
Yeah.
talked to inmates
Wonderful.
Wow.
because re-entry is very important to
Yeah.
him. Making sure guys are plan. He believes in second chances and he wants to make sure these guys don't give up, but that they're also taking the steps they need to take so that when re-entry is a possibility for them, they're prepared.
Amazing.
He went out to Indian River Juvenile Correctional Center and delivered the same message to the youth offenders there. And he's probably the only Hall of Famer who's going to want to do that. Others go to the food bank. Others go to to Akron Children's Hospital. Others go to reading rooms, schools, first responders. So it's been a blessing for the community, and so they spend time in the community and they spend time in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, that doesn't that segues
Yeah.
what you were saying
Yeah.
right here. That
Yeah.
that example right there
Mhm.
segues into the character
Mhm.
program that the Hall of Fame is working on right now. A new
Yeah, we
exhibit,
opened
a
a
new
character exhibit earlier this year, and it's a commitment of ours to keep that open throughout 2025 to talk about how the game of. I know, Coach, I know you've preached this. It's part of what we talk about in the high school council. When it's played correctly, when it's coached correctly, there's no other sport like football. It is you can win a basketball championship with 2 or 3 great players. You can, just talking just in the context of team sports. You can win a hockey tournament with a red hot goalie. You can go pretty far with a dominant pitching staff in baseball. If you have a weak link on the football field, the opponent's going to exploit it. You need 11 people doing their job on offense. You need 11 people doing their job on defense. And part of that is the resilience to work as a team, the commitment that it takes, the respect for yourself, the respect for your opponent. I mean, these are all values that we teach at the Hall of Fame in the context of the game. And so what we wanted to do this year is find some of those living, breathing examples of men who have done things the right way. And it could be on the field, but even more so, it's off the field. When the game is over, even when they're playing, what are guys doing on Tuesday? Typically Tuesday is the free day for professional players. Most of them are giving back to their community on Tuesday in some form or another, and so we wanted to recognize that, celebrate that, look for examples. Some of them are taken to the extreme. There's stories about men who have given their lives for their country. Pat Tillman, somebody who gave his life saving someone else's. Joe Delaney. We get to tell all of those stories, and of course, a big centerpiece for us is the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, which each year the NFL says all 32 teams can nominate somebody for the Man of the Year. I know the Browns in recent years, Joel Bitonio, Denzel Ward, Miles Garrett have been the team nominees, and then the league ultimately picks one, and so we want to recognize them as well. And so this is all part of a big exhibit that we really want the kids to come down on field trips and see, or sons and daughters or granddaughters and grandsons with their grandparents. Come and see this and see how the game intersects with life.
Right. Those men, their lives are very clearly a character model, but also so, they have a story to tell. They all do, and that's what this exhibit can really do. And we're excited with that possibility and with our council and in doing that.
Yeah.
And
Coach,
what
you know, I mean,
go ahead.
every team, every organization has, has a knucklehead or two. I mean, it's just a fact of life, not every
Welcome to the
situation is
world, right? I mean,
perfect.
come on.
Exactly. But I think one of the things I've gained a deeper appreciation of is if you've got a professional sports organization, you can't be on a professional football team and last for very long if you're a knucklehead. And for that reason, almost every single one of these guys on all 32 teams is out doing something on their, with their free time on Tuesday to give back. They understand their blessings. They understand, Mike Singletary, I talked about him, visiting the prisons, and one of his messages is, and he tells the guys, there aren't very many of us who would be comfortable in that situation, but he's sitting down at a table across from somebody who is incarcerated, and he looks him in the eye and he says, the only difference between you and me is a decision I made when I was 18 years old, and but for the grace of God, there go I. And that's really how razor thin that margin is sometimes. And so to have good mentors, to have good coaches, to have good parents that instill these character values, that's really sometimes all it is for a young man or young woman, at the high school level. And we at the Hall really feel like kind of that high school and middle school level is really where we want to be reaching people to infuse these ideas that listen, not every, I mean, the percentage of people that make the Pro Football Hall of Fame is 0.0000, another zero or two, 1% of all the people who play. But that's not why you're in, that's not why you're in the game. Coach, I mean, what percentage of your kids, even as a elite program as you ran, what percentage of your kids played college football? And then from that percentage, what percentage played pro football? I mean, you're starting to count on just a couple of hands. But how many of those kids are now, doctors, lawyers, teachers, first responders, many of them still in the Cleveland community. They give back, and what they learned on the football field is helping them to give back. So that's really what we're trying to project forward here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Rich gets it. And you point out too, I mean, these players are heroes to these kids.
Yeah.
So if they have an ability to come to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, look at what their heroes are doing on their off time. That's just more inspiration and examples that kids can look at and say, that's who I want to be. That's who I want to be like.
This is a very important program right now. Sure, they see these athletes make amazing plays, God-given talent, and they're in it. But to see that, they're human beings, and they care about human beings, and they take pride in their care. That's unbelievably important.
Yeah, it's important. Our mission, our mission at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the greatest of the game and preserve it. That's the first pillar. Second pillar, preserve its history. Pretty straightforward, pretty self-evident for what a football museum would do. But the third pillar of our mission statement is to promote the values of the game. And, as we reflected a handful of months ago, do we do that to the degree that we ought to? It is part of our mission statement. And were we gravitating too much to the first two pillars of our mission? And so a real concerted effort in 2025 to hone in on promoting the values of the game, and this character exhibit is one way we want to do that.
I love it. I want to come see it. Maybe in a future episode, we'll come highlight it. We owe you a quote.
Now, I sent him the vocabulary list. Did you look at that?
Oh, yeah.
Now, what'd you pick out? Because all those things could apply to, I think, football, like our character exhibit. I mean, really, we're doing a lot of that. So what do you think?
Okay, so I scanned the list, and if it was on the list, I missed it. But and it's not so much a character trait per se, but I'll tell you what what I always look for in people that I'm considering to work with me, either on a project or uh, as a potential hire, is curiosity.
Hmm.
Ooh,
So
That's a good one.
I'm going to throw that
okay.
on. I'm going to throw that on your list because curiosity is
That's-
really important to me. I want to work with people who ask, why something is the way that it is, and what can we do to, what can we do to make it better. But from your list, Coach, I really like accountability.
Mhm. Yeah,
I think
I can
I
understand.
think what separates good leadership from lesser leadership is um, self accountability, and then demanding account. If you're the coach or the leader of a group, I think you have to. I think you have to demand accountability. I think if you let things slide, or you let your star player do something that you wouldn't let your uh, second stringer do, I think you're really opening the doors to big problems. And
Okay.
I'm sometimes guilty. I'll be honest. I'm sometimes guilty of that. You let the
Mm.
star performer um, cut a corner that you'd hold somebody else to account for. So
Hmm.
that's something I'm working on. That's why I jumped off the list at me.
It's an important one.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. It is
I
a
mean,
great point.
it's what, life, and you're working with people. You got your
Yeah,
job, be accountable.
Hmm.
They're counting
yeah,
on you.
Hmm.
You're part of the
right.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other people on the team are looking to you as the leader, to do that. And if you don't, now it's mutiny.
Yeah. Right.
Muni.
Do you have a quote for him?
Yes. All
Let's
right,
end on a quote
Rich. I
here.
got it. I taught Shakespeare for a long time. Okay, English teacher. All right, and we now have this habit now of every show that I find a Shakespeare quote that would have fit the situation that we're doing. Okay, now, all right. This is from the play Henry IV, Part One, history play. Shakespeare. Okay, he did a lot of history plays because, come on, he's making money because there was such patriotism back then because England was the power of the world and all that. Okay, but anyway, it's in Act One, and it simply says this: greatness knows itself. And you stop and think about that. I mean, that's the way you live. If you've achieved this notoriety, and people look at you as being, wow, that's the model of what I want to. Here's a kid, I want to be like that player. I want this. That's how you live too, though, and just what you're talking about, right? They're in the Hall of Fame, right, and everything, but they're willing to show, yeah, but I want to be in the Hall of Fame of life too.
Yeah.
I want to live greatness
Mhm.
in everything I do. So simply, Shakespeare, thank you. Greatness knows itself. It's not just here and there. It's just part of you.
Okay.
And Rich, we got to have you back on the show because
All right.
Yep.
you have such great insight.
This is fun.
I feel like we have a lot to talk about for future episodes too. But thank you for your time here. And we'll have Rich back on.
Let's do it.
I'm retired. He's the guy that's really
I know.
busy.
I know. Well, listen, thank you, Rich. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to The Object of the Game. Remember, you can catch all of our shows here on the Big Play Network. Where can you catch that? The Big Play Network YouTube page, all of the social channels, live on X, and also download the free Big Play app, which is available on Roku and iOS. We will see you right back here